Who are the best cornerbacks in the 2025 NFL Draft? Today we set out to find that out by looking at my rankings of the top cornerbacks in this draft class. And I'll tell you this is a very good, very deep cornerback draft class. A little bit deeper, I would say, than last year. I think last year was a little bit more top heavy. A lot of players in the first and second round were extremely good, including a few guys who I think I underestimated a little bit. Obviously, we know about how I underestimated Quinyon Mitchell and how I had Cooper DeJean, even though I liked him at number 8, just simply because he was a nickelback. And he has exceeded my expectations even as a nickelback already. And Quinyon Mitchell was someone I was really did not expect, but it helped me learn a lot more about the position. This year, at the top of the draft, there are a few players who I'm a little skeptical on. Fascinating prospects, and I think have some skill sets at the next level nonetheless. But as far as just overall players at the top of the board, this is an extremely top heavy cornerback class. Three of the cornerbacks are in my top 10, and I would probably have them as my number one in most other drafts. These guys I just think are pretty much almost flawless prospects. And then there's several players in other aspects who I think are just amazing cornerbacks, guys who've got amazing technique, have certain skill sets that kind of stand out. And there are a lot of players like that at both man, zone, nickelback. One thing I'm going to change this year as far as my cornerback position rankings go is I'm going to differentiate man, zone, and nickelback as far as cornerbacks who I think are best in each scheme. I think that was especially something I was a little bit more cautious on doing last year. But I do think it is necessary in order to make those differentiations so that situations such as Cooper DeJean don't end up being the norm for me. I think that there's certain players who are best fitted as nickelback, and if they end up playing something out of that, that can hurt their draft stock. And obviously, unlike teams and general managers, I don't, have any say in any team that any player that gets drafted where. I don't know. I'm not an NFL insider. I'm just pretty much a guy who is using his computer to make these videos. So there's not much I can say as far as where teams are going to draft these players. I really don't know as much. I only know as much as NFL Network or any other media network involving sports puts out there as far as information goes, and a couple of friends of mine who work for NFL organizations. But that's pretty much it. Um, as far as cornerbacks overall, though, it is necessary to make that differentiation, especially with a cornerback draft class as good as this one. So you guys understand how highly I think of these cornerbacks, to understand that I'm still putting respect on their name before I give out my full description on my full rankings. And obviously, there is an elephant in the room, being, of course, Travis Hunter, who plays both wide receiver and cornerback. Like I mentioned in the wide receiver ranking video, I do not know whether he's going to play mostly wide receiver snaps and play less cornerback or vice versa. We can guess, we can say what we want. I would personally prefer him as a cornerback compared to a wide receiver. But at the end of the day, nobody that is not in an NFL organization knows. So at this point, I decided to keep him out of just the slide deck rankings. Before then, I make a differentiation moving on further into my overall cornerback rankings. Sorry, guys. Apologies. My camera, for some reason, just started glitching for no reason. So we're back again. Like I said, with the cornerbacks, I do think it makes sense to make that differentiation. But going on into the kind of cornerback rankings, just to kind of make it clear for everyone what my criteria is for this position, because this is extremely extensive. I prioritize cornerbacks who are especially good with speed. I like closeout speed. I think the 40 especially matters for cornerbacks. for that reason. I like the more athletic, more lanky, long cornerbacks. I prioritize man coverage over everything, especially press man coverage. If you can, cornerbacks dictate where the receiver is going right off the bat, in my opinion. If you, put a hand, jam the cornerback right off the snap, you can very much dictate which way he runs and then being able to accordingly adjust your leverage. I think footwork, technique especially really matters. Obviously, ball skills, agility. You got to be able to kind of make plays that your colleagues wouldn't be able to make. Use that length for that reason, and just get in front of the football. Where you place your hand, your footwork both before pre-snap and afterward, and as you get the ball in front of you, I think is especially important. And then you're talking about just getting the hand on the ball, not providing a lot of space. I like players who give as little amount of separation as possible, not relying overly on their length. Being able to just kind of not give as much space as possible. If you have extra versatility, always great. Obviously, if you can play all three levels, that is especially important in my opinion. That's not really, something that all cornerbacks can do. It usually is exclusive to the best players in the draft. But I do think that there are a lot of those types of cornerbacks relative to most drafts this year. So let's get started. We'll go on into the cornerback rankings. As far as man coverage cornerbacks, there are 8 that I thought were worth mentioning. Starting off with Benjamin Morrison. Simply put, I think Benjamin Morrison is just a flawless cornerback prospect. Really, the only reason he fell down draft boards to begin with was anything involving his injuries. Obviously, he struggled with those a lot this past year, especially some knee concerns. I don't really think it's much of a problem. He's been mostly healthy throughout his entire career. Even if it does hurt him, I don't see it as being something that has to do with anything within, kind of continual injuries. I think it's more just about, kind of fixing some issues that have been within his system over the last few years. But Benjamin Morrison has probably got the most solid technique I've ever seen out of cornerback. Footwork, arm leverage, being able to get in front using his shoulders better probably than any cornerback ever that I've been able to grade. His footwork, being able to pretty much mirror a receiver right from the get-go and being able to run his route for him. You don't usually see that many cornerbacks do that. He's got great ball skills. He really is a receiver in that way. His vision, being able to bait opposing quarterbacks into just some bad mistakes. He can play all 3 types of coverage that way: man coverage, zone coverage, press coverage. He has nickel versatility, in my opinion. I think that way Benjamin Morrison has just shown that he can continuously, at a consistent rate, be able to, showcase his athleticism, his technique, his footwork, and that just makes him really the perfect cornerback prospect, if you ask me. I mean, he's a guy who runs 4.39. He's got great cone drills. Unfortunately, he didn't show that at the combine due to his injuries, but he has shown that in a lot of college events. And for that reason, I think Benjamin Morrison, he also fits a lot. He is not really scheme dependent, but as far as schemes go, really is the modern day cornerback, fits pretty much every type of scheme that most defenses run, especially when we look at like teams like the Chargers, the Baltimore Ravens, etc. In that zone type scheme, he can very much get back and be able to kind of ball hawk, or if he needs to just play on an island with the receiver, I think he can very much do that. Reminds me a lot of Darrelle Revis that way, maybe not nearly as physical, but certainly as far as just being able to mirror the receiver, Benjamin Morrison is one of one. He is my number 1 man coverage corner in this class. I think he's best as man coverage, as a man cover corner, just because you can put him on an island on his own and he will do the job for you. And number 2, I'm going to go with Maxwell Hairston. As far as athletic prowess, you're talking about a guy who runs 4.28, got incredible instincts, really just absolutely sticky cornerback, just does not give you any room at all what to work with. Footwork is not nearly as good as Benjamin Morrison, but it does what it needs to. You're talking about a guy who can flip his hips and being able to get a hand on the ball every time. And he's got great length in order to make up any time that there's space given by a receiver. Separation really doesn't happen a lot of the time, but in case the quarterback throws out of his reach, he is able to make plays on the ball. He is great as far as finding the ball in the middle of the air and when the ball is in the receiver's hands as far as punching it out. It's great as far as tackles, blitzes goes, can play nickelback if need be. And from that standpoint, that's what really impressed me about Maxwell Hairston, his tackling ability, his overall instincts as far as finding the knack of the ball, his agility in tight spaces, being able to get through and being able to make the sack. Overall, I think Maxwell Hairston is just an incredibly versatile cornerback. And with that speed, I think that's something that a lot of teams should covet, given how good he is on that route. On the same reason, I have Darian Porter. I don't think he's nearly as versatile as Maxwell Hairston is. But, as far as athleticism goes, as far as just overall sticky coverage goes, he is as good as Maxwell Hairston. I don't see him as consistently working in man coverage. He relies a little bit more zone coverage, but his skill set at the next level translates best if he's playing man coverage. We're talking about a guy who averages less than a yard of separation allowed on every play that he's played on man coverage, jams receivers at the line very well. Great tackling skills, but a guy who runs 4.30 and shows that on tape with incredible incredible recovery speed. Darian Porter is very, very physical, and for that reason, I just think that even for what his length doesn't provide him, he is as good of a cornerback as any in this draft, and he is my number 3 man coverage cornerback. At number 4, we're going to go with Jacob Parrish, another guy who is very good at mirroring receivers, another guy who's extremely athletic, 4.35, and doesn't really allow a lot as far as separation goes. At times, he can kind of back off, but I think that's more due to his scheme than anything. It concerns me a little bit as far as zone coverage. He can be a little slow to his step, which is a big problem, but I think his footwork more than makes up for it. Definitely, as far as athleticism goes, he's not as good as a Maxwell Hairston and Darian Porter. And for a guy who plays very similar and leaves a little bit room for error as far as just kind of separation goes with the receiver, for that reason, I think he's a little bit lower. But I still like him a lot as a cornerback. I like his overall technique, his ability to gain leverage and kind of dictate where the team is going. And he's got great zone versatility. He's not as great as nickelback, but I still think he has some versatility there if you want to play him as a nickelback. But mostly you're going to be looking at a guy who plays off zone coverage and mostly man coverage, if anything. And for that reason, Jacob Parrish comes in number 4. Jason Marshall at 5. I'm probably the biggest fan of Jason Marshall out there. This is a long, lanky cornerback, runs a 4.43 40 time, and has got better recovery speed than his 40 time shows. Long strides, being able to just make up ground and being able to get a play on the ball. Doesn't have the greatest ball skills on the planet, and doesn't have per se the greatest footwork in the world. But when you talk about his overall technique, it is as good as any in this draft. And for that reason, I just think that Jason Marshall has the length to fit with pretty much any cornerback in this draft. I think that Jason Marshall is the prototypical modern day defensive back for those reasons, and I think he can do really well at the next level for those reasons. At number 6, we're going to go with Trey Amos. Trey Amos, I will be honest, I was a little bit more skeptical about. I think he's a little more shallow as far as coverage goes. This is a guy who definitely allowed a lot more separation on tape than other cornerbacks did, and that kind of concerned me. He's got versatility as both the zone and man coverage, and he's got great ball skills. His agility in the middle of the air, being able to contort his body, is very impressive. And he's got decent recovery speed, but again, he's got to work on just not being able to give that much separation. He relies a lot at times when losing his positioning as far as kind of holding being a little handsy, and that's going to draw flags at the next level, and that could be a big problem, especially early on. I think he's going to be a bit of a developmental project per se, and I think his footwork definitely needs to be coached, but I think it can be coached. His indecisiveness is definitely a problem, but his press coverage skills are awesome. He's got great aggressiveness as far as tackle, definitely shows a relentless motor several times. And he's another one of those guys who can mirror routes if need be. He doesn't do that often per se. He's more of a guy who kind of, has a feel for the field around him and kind of makes his decision accordingly. But I think schemes in the NFL are definitely allowing for that more. He's definitely shown some versatility as far as that. And I think Trey Amos definitely has a say to stay in the NFL. 7, I'm going to go with Roger Longbeam. I like Roger Longbeam a lot. I think that this is a guy who especially shows, sticky coverage. He's got great speed, 4.39. He's got great footwork. His hips move really well. He's got great awareness in zone coverage, quick at processing, great as far as a returner goes. He's got great ball skills. He can get his hand on the ball. He's got great length for that with 42 passes defended. Relentless as far as run support, can get through tackles, shows great physicality and being able to, get tackles down on the field. And he's got great technique as far as a tackler, shows great angle. Really what it comes down to is his recovery speed can be a problem. He's not as sticky as some of the cornerbacks I've shown above him. I think he can be more sticky on a play-to-play basis than a Trey Amos, but with that agility and the recovery speed that Amos has got, especially on shorter passes, I think Roger Longbeam is beat by Amos. I think you're talking about at times while has a decent wingspan, he's not able to use that as well. He, as great of a tackler as he is as far as technique goes, he misses a lot of tackles. He can be over aggressive, and that is a problem. I think that can be coached. But when you add in the fact that he is just not nearly as strong as some of his players, yeah, he's going to be the punchline on a highlight reel. He's going to be on a lot of you got mossed type issues. But I still think that he will be a guy who can definitely play, 7-8 years for so to say. And then Azare Thomas, as far as just overall technique goes, he definitely looks the part. He's a guy who has the skill set as far as man zone coverage, press coverage goes. He's a great tackler. He's got great instincts, recovery speed, agility, footwork. He does all of that type of stuff. He's pretty athletic. What it really comes down to is he just doesn't do it on a consistent play-to-play basis. And that's definitely a huge problem as far as he definitely allows a lot more room for a receiver to be able to make those catches. He doesn't make a play on the ball if the quarterback makes an out-of-this-world throw. And that can definitely be a problem at the next level. And he doesn't use his strides as good as he should be for his level. And I think for that reason, he has a lot of room to grow. So for that reason, I have Azare Thomas at 8. At number 1, as far as zone coverage cornerbacks go, this is a little bit more tricky because there are some guys who I think definitely are good in man coverage, but I do think they're better off in zone coverage because of while they're great as far as being able to cover the guy that they're playing, they're definitely guys who allow for more room for the receiver. And unlike, guys like Roger Longbeam, Azare Thomas, etc., these are not guys who, it's a problem of they're sticky, but they rely on just kind of running with their guy. These are guys that have more versatility as far as better tackling skills, better instincts, better agility than some of the guys on the bottom of the man coverage list. But at number 1, however, we're going to start off with Will Johnson, a guy who I think can play any sort of coverage you really want from him. I like him best as zone coverage because of his tackling skills and because of his instincts. They're rare. The way he can play man coverage really well, and if you don't believe that, I mean, the Marvin Harrison tape against Ohio State in 2023 will show otherwise. just absolutely impressive. For a guy who is much bigger and stronger than him, he was physical. He was relentless. He showed great aggression. He's got great ball skills, and we saw that last year against Purdue. He's made some insane plays on the ball. The ability to track the ball in middle air and just adjust accordingly. Even when he takes, he's in physical, kind of hard to get room type situations. He's able to jump above everyone and make plays and get the ball. And he's got great return skills. He's got a great eye for getting to the end zone once he gets the ball on target. He's got great recognition, great at just baiting players, and his recovery speed on just both, short routes, comeback routes, and being able to close the gap, but also just whenever he is beat, just being able to use his length fantastically, in such a fantastic way, and not only use his length well, but actually get back to the receiver, make sure that they have little room to make a play before the ball gets to them. It's sensational, and it's really impressive given the fact that he's not per se a fast cornerback as far as measurables, has a 4.5 speed around. I would say as far as his overall tape goes, he's better on tape than his other raw numbers show. And he can play all three levels. He can play nickelback if you ask him, although I would prefer him much more as a boundary cornerback. He mirrors his receiver really well. He's got great footwork, great technique, understands leverage really well, and understands angles and cuts them off. Will Johnson, in most other drafts, I would say is definitely, without a doubt, a number one cornerback. If you're talking about last year's draft, I would have him as my number one cornerback without a doubt. But Will Johnson, I think, is best suited for zone coverage, like I said, because of the instincts, agility. I think he fits well for a team like the Ravens for that reason. But yeah, he is my number one zone coverage cornerback. At 2, I got Fentrell Cypress Jr. from Florida State. This guy was a star last year for Florida State. Honestly, the only reason he's not being talked about much more is because the fact that Florida State went 1-11 this year. I honestly don't understand why he's not being talked about more. He is just superb. Talking about a guy who was 4.3 type speed, great footwork, great as far as transition, doesn't really get baited by secondary moves. He's got great instinct in both man and zone coverage. Great at reading the quarterback's eyes. Versatile as far as playing any type of scheme, playing nickelback. He's got great special team skills too, which I think will be great because he's probably going to be drafted lower on in the draft. Doesn't really react irrationally, when a receiver makes a movement out of the ordinary. Just kind of trusts his technique really well. He's got great hands. Can play on all three levels really well and kind of adjust accordingly. He's great as far as, he's, in my opinion, I would say one of the leaders as far as that Florida State defense, as good as they were in 2023, as far as directing other teammates and, recognizing schemes and being able to get his teammates to move accordingly and help him out, and him being able to help them out. And then as far as just ball skills go, he's got great ability, great recognition for where the ball is going to go and just making plays on the ball. Really what it comes down to is press coverage. He could use a lot of work. He's not great as far as jamming the receiver off the line. He gets overpowered. He's not really strong at all, and doesn't have great angles. But really, he's never shown me any time where he's given too much room for the cornerback to make a play, or for the receiver to make a play, and he can play on all three levels, so you can really move him around if you need him to play nickelback. I would think that's great. I don't think he's a guy, however, who can bait quarterbacks kind of like that. He's more of a guy who's just plays well at zone coverage, but I would prefer him best as a zone coverage boundary cornerback because of his great ball skills, because of his ability to read the cornerback or the quarterback's eyes and act accordingly with his footwork, rather than just being able to kind of dictate where the receiver is going on a slot route and just kind of getting in front of it. For that reason, I think Fentrell Cypress is best suited as far as zone. He can accordingly play into, outside roles. He's great as far as being able to take out the outside routes for a quarterback, and I think that's a skill that's especially necessary for zone coverage. I've seen that more and more as out of guys who I thought were better suited as nickelback. I saw that this past year with Mike Sanders still in the playoffs against Jared Goff and the Lions, and I think the same thing of Fentrell Cypress. Three, I'm going to go with Noel Williams. I know a lot of draft pundits really like him. A lot of YouTube guys really like him. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan. I think, again, he's kind of like Azare Thomas that way, where he gives a little bit too much space to work with. Honestly, looking though at this, I would probably say I would have Dorian Strong actually ahead of him. Maybe that, this is kind of just a secondary look at it, but honestly, I go back and forth on this, to be honest with you. They really are in the same tier for me for different reasons. Noah Williams, I think, is a better ball hawk, has more versatility. I think he's better footwork, better technique. Actually, I take that back. As far as footwork goes, I think Noah Williams is definitely better. He's got better length. When he is sticky in coverage, there's no letting out on him. He's got great ability to contort in the body, make a play on the ball, great agility. But Dorian Strong, I think, is a smarter player. I think his technique is a lot better. His understanding of leverage and getting in front of the receiver when he's been beat is superb. His footwork is still amazing, very close to Noah Williams that way. And his ability to, trust his instincts and his speed on deep threats is just phenomenal. I think Noah Williams, obviously being a lot slower, doesn't help him compared to Dorian Strong. And I think Dorian Strong also has nickel versatility. For that reason, I would probably put Dorian Strong at number 3 and Noah Williams at number 4 looking at it. But I wouldn't be mad if you did it vice versa. I had that originally. Just looking at my overall criteria again and kind of thinking about that in my head, I think I'm going to go with Dorian Strong at 3. 5, I'm going to go with Kobe Bryant. This is a guy who, as far as instincts and agility goes, is superb. Great at reading the quarterback. He's pretty good at returning plays, and he's got great speed that way. But I think Kobe Bryant is a guy, and mind you, this is not Kobe Bryant, the basketball player, reincarnated, but Kobe Bryant, the zone cornerback, has got great versatility, and he's not to also be mistaken for Kobe Bryant, who plays for the Seattle Seahawks. This is a guy who more relies on his agility on the boundary than Kobe Bryant of the Seattle Seahawks. I know it probably confused a lot of you guys now, but this guy is great. I think it really comes down to, at times, he's not necessarily the best tackler. At times, he can kind of get lost in coverage around him. I think overall, the big problem I would say I have most with Kobe Bryant is, while he has got great ball skills, his frame and his lack of length and his ability to draw penalties kind of definitely doesn't give him a lot of room for error as far as consistently being sticky at the next level, especially when you talk about he doesn't got great, deep speed. You're talking about a guy who ran a 4.5 speed. Again, like I said, his recovery skills aren't necessarily the best, and his tackling angles aren't great. You're talking about a guy, however, as far as his ability to read the field, that's really his bread and butter, and that's what he's got to rely on. And then 6, I'm going to go Denzel Burke. Same thing as Azare Thomas, really, with zone coverage. I think a lot of people look at him as a man coverage. I look at him as a guy who's better as far as off zone coverage, reading the quarterback's eyes and reacting accordingly. His tackling skills are great, in my opinion. He shows great physicality and aggressiveness. Really what it comes down to is a guy, he's just not consistent as far as sticky coverage. On one play, he will lock down the guy and mirror him in every way. And then the next play, he will just get burnt. So from that angle, I just think that Denzel Burke has a lot of room to grow. He's a very raw player. And I would not put him above any of the other guys here. But then as far as, my boundary cornerbacks, ranking them overall, I'll start off before I get to the nickel cornerbacks. I only have 3 that I thought were worth mentioning. As far as nickelbacks, there's really only one name that stands out above the rest, and that is Jahdae Barron. He's been getting top 10, top 15 buzz. Daniel Jeremiah, one of the more well respected individuals as far as the NFL Network goes. Former scout for the Eagles, a guy who I have utmost respect for. I'm always interested in what he says as far as his overall takes. Um, he's he absolutely is infatuated with Jahdae Barron in every way. I like Jahdae Barron. Don't get me wrong. Again, like I said, this is a deep cornerback draft class, and I think there are a lot of players who I would put high. I don't agree with some people who have him as their number one cornerback. Again, as far as nickelback goes, he's honestly probably the best nickelback that's come out in a while. He's got great instincts as far as being able to blitz, uncanny ability really that you don't usually see every day. But as far as his zone coverage skills, tackling, being able to bait a quarterback, and kind of making players act accordingly, his skill set on the inside cornerback role is just phenomenal. He's got great length, great speed, great physicality. There's nothing really I can say about Jahdae Barron, but I just don't like his skill set as it translates on the boundary. He's a lot less sticky as a cornerback on the boundary, allows a lot more separation, doesn't allow anything on the nickelback, so he's very not versatile, but when you plays at the nickelback, he is one of the best. He has the potential, one of the best cornerbacks in the league. So a team has got to draft him as a nickelback in order for my draft stock to be much higher of him. For what it's worth, though, because of the fact that he is not as versatile as anyone, I don't think I would have him above the likes of Will Johnson or Benjamin Morris, just because I think these guys can play at any position. They're that good, in my opinion. But again, Jahdae Barron, don't get it. Don't get it twisted. I like Jahdae Barron a lot, and I think really highly of him. Two, I got Quincy Riley, a guy who I think no one's really talking about, but another guy who's phenomenal as far as his tackling skills go, side to side range of a linebacker or safety, really, and he can play safety if he needs to. Guy he's got great recognition for the open man and being able to get after him and being able to cover him with sticky coverage. He's got great zone instincts as far as man coverage goes. He's not necessarily the most sticky cornerback, but he does the job better than most. And like I said, a fantastic tackler. I would definitely have Quincy Riley in my top 10. Where exactly? More on that later on. But then at number 3, I got Zy Alexander, an LSU guy who I like him. Really what it comes down to the fact is he's just not played a lot. So it's really hard to put a full statement on him. As far as going back to his junior college days, as far as JUCO, as far as, JUCO goes, I honestly think that he showed a lot of promise as far as instincts, as far as agility, as athleticism goes. Zone coverage, he's great, being able to get in front and bait quarterbacks. He's got great awareness around the field around him. Decent ball skills, better than most. Phenomenal footwork. But again, like I said, I would have loved to see more out of Zy Alexander. He's just got too many injury problems for me to put him even on the top 10 whatsoever. Really not played a lot over the last few years. He played really well against Ole Miss, however, I will say that. I got to watch that game live in LSU, and he was phenomenal. But Zy Alexander, otherwise, just hard to put much on him when he's really not shown much on tape or otherwise. But he's at number 3. As far as the boundary cornerbacks go, we'll go through that list pretty quickly. I got Benjamin Morrison and Will Johnson at 1 and 2. Like I said, these are the only 2 cornerbacks besides Travis Hunter, who I think can play on all 3 levels. Really what it comes down to is the fact that Benjamin Morrison is someone who really has got more athleticism, just perfect technique. There's nothing really I can say. Will Johnson is more of a guy who could just play all 3 levels, fantastic, and at elite level. But I would trust a guy who I think is going to be elite at one thing over the jack of all trades. So I have Benjamin, and a guy who's more athletic, so I have Benjamin Morrison a little higher. Maxwell Harrison, another guy who I can play all 3 levels. Not necessarily the greatest as far as zone coverage, not nearly as good as Will Johnson, Benjamin Morrison, as far as consistency goes, nor production. But as far as just raw ability goes, 4.28 speed speaks for itself. Blitzing skills speak for themselves. His range in nickelback, his ability to bait, not nearly as good as Will Johnson, but still very impressive. And I would have him at number 3 without a doubt. And then we got Darian Porter, like I said, just a little bit of a worse version of Maxwell Hairston as far as athleticism, not nearly as versatile as far as nickelback skills go. Jacob Parrish, a little less athletic than Darian Porter and Hairston, has a little bit of room to grow as far as not being consistent always, as far as showing that he can be sticky all the time, but more sticky than most on a play-to-play basis. Jason Marshall, I love his length. I think at times he can rely a little bit too much on his physicality, holds a little bit. I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem. I think that can be coached out of him. It's not really a problem of he's not, he's being baited at the line and then loses leverage and then has to make up for that. It's just more he's very physical. He's got great length, so that I don't see that being much of a problem. Again, for that reason, I have him at number 6. Trey Amos, I'd like to see him be more consistent as far as sticky coverage on a play-to-play basis, but I do like what I see there. 8, I got Fentrell Cypress. I think that his strength is going to limit him at the next level, but certainly as far as his overall just technique, just as far as from a technical standpoint, he's as good as every other cornerback, got great versatility. I would probably have him a lot higher if it wasn't for his strength concerns. Roger Longbeam, like I said, just got to be better on a play-to-play basis, lacks a little bit more versatility. And I think that overall he can use a little bit more work as far as, you know, Roger Long, definitely very agile, but, very lack of strength. And when he does lose his ability to have leverage, and his recovery speed is not nearly as good. It's just kind of deep threat. And again, he needs to work on his tackling angles a lot more. Too many whiffs, but he's definitely good from that standpoint. And then Noel Williams, a guy who I think has the skill set to play long at the next level. When he's got sticky coverage, he's got great sticky coverage, but unlike Jacob Parrish, where it's more often he's sticky than not, Noel Williams is the opposite. But he looks the part, definitely. He's got great length, great ball skills, great recognition. So he definitely should be put on that list. But then we'll get into the actual list. We'll start off at number 10 with Trey Amos. I think Trey Amos, like I said, just really needs to work on play-to-play consistency. But again, I still like him. Number 9, I'm going to go with Quincy Riley ahead of him. I like his instincts better when he plays man coverage. He's a lot more consistent as far as stickiness goes, shows a lot more agility on a play-to-play basis. When Amos is there, however, you drop your jaw a lot more, but Riley is a little more athletic that way. That also helps him there. 8, I'm going to go with Jason Marshall, even more athletic, a little bit more lengthy, but has got to work on not being nearly as physical or as handsy per se. But definitely worth being on this list, in my opinion. Jacob Parrish is number 7. Like I said, just got to be a little bit more consistent as far as sticky coverage. 6, Darian Porter. On most other lists, honestly, looking back, I kind of overlooked Darian Porter at first just because there's not as much tape as some of these other players. But what I do see of him when I see him is just phenomenal. There's nothing I can say wrong about him. For that reason, I got Darian Porter at 6. There's nothing wrong about his game. It's just the other guys are just better, if I'll be putting it that way. Jahdae Barron is going to be at 5. Like I said, his versatility kind of lacks, and that kind of limits him as far as his ranking here. In most other drafts, he'd definitely be close to a number 1. I would definitely have him as a first-round pick, and I'd probably say he's a top 20 cornerback. Again, I still have to rearrange my board and see where he falls there. But Jahdae Barron is a top 5 cornerback in this class. That is high praise given how highly I think of this cornerback draft class. So make no mistake, I really like him, but I would like to see a little bit more versatility out of him. And because I don't, that's going to be a little bit of a problem. Maxwell Hairston, he's not as good, but pretty good as far as a blitzer. Not as good as Jahdae Barron, but shows great versatility as far as his ability to play in the nickelback. Very smart player, and you combine that with just rare speed, rare athleticism, and an ability to play man zone and press coverage at a high level. Very physical. I think that makes him a phenomenal cornerback at the next level, and I think he's very underrated. And I think that he, in my opinion, is without a doubt a top 20 prospect in this draft. Number 3, we're going to go with Will Johnson. Like I said, if it wasn't for his athleticism, he would be higher on this list as far as just, pure deep speed. but he's shown he can stick with the receiver no matter what. Mirrors his receiver very well, can play all three types of coverage, and plays nickelback decently. But really, it's his recognition skills and his return ability that really stands out. I think he can be a guy who scores a lot of defensive touchdowns at the next level. Definitely have a lot of interceptions. The very same reason I got Benjamin Morrison here. If you throw to him, he's going to intercept that ball. I would not throw to him, and I think he's one of those cornerbacks who down the line is going to not be thrown at a lot, very much like a Richard Sherman or a Darrelle Revis. For that reason, if the injury problems are not that bad, I would probably have him at number one. And I don't think they're that much concerned to put him lower on the list. It's been a one-off type thing. From what I heard, it's Saul. He should be ready to go come NFL training camp, so that's really not much of a problem. But because the other guy I have on this list is that good, I don't have him at number two. And you're wondering who that is. Maybe not, given the fact that I've talked about him on this list earlier shortly. But obviously, I had Benjamin Morrison as my number one boundary and my number one man cornerback. So who do I have at number one? It's going to be Travis Hunter. A guy who's got phenomenal footwork, phenomenal technique, phenomenal instincts, very rare instincts as far as a cornerback. And you combine his very rare ball skills as far as being able to play a receiver full time and knowing the footwork of his receiver and reacting accordingly. A very smart cornerback, and runs a 4.39, much like Benjamin Morrison. So I have no problem with putting him at number one, given the fact that he doesn't have the injury concerns. And I think he has nickel versatility, maybe not to the level of a Benjamin Morrison, a Will Johnson, Maxwell Hairston, or a Jahdae Barron for sure. But certainly, as far as just his overall footwork goes, his overall instincts, his overall ability to read the field and act accordingly, his agility in air and when just kind of reacting to the receiver, and his ability to be able to be sticky on all three levels. Travis Hunter is number one. I feel like I've said the word sticky within this video an uncanny amount of times, to the point where I should probably put on that Tyler, the Creator song. But, that is something I really prioritize in cornerbacks, their ability to just not allow a lot of yards of separation against the receiver. And Travis Hunter does that as well as any cornerback in this draft. He is that good of a player on both sides of the ball. It really shows how impressive he is, and I'm very fascinated to see what his role is on both types of positions at the next level. But yeah, that's the list. Again, we'll go Travis Hunter at 1, Morrison at 2, Johnson at 3, Hairston at 4, Jahdae Barron at 5. All top 20 players, in my opinion. Darian Porter's great at 6. Jacob Parrish, Jason Marshall, Quincy Riley, Trey Amos. And then here's the full list again as far as boundary, nickel, man, zone coverage, etc. But that is the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. We're getting more and more close to the beginning of the draft on Thursday, of course. And I could not be more excited. As far as this cornerback class goes, this was one of the better positions in this draft, so I was very excited in putting out this video. I wanted to be more thorough, more specific, and it was very hard. I definitely will say that I spend the most time covering the cornerbacks more than any other position in this draft. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Peace.